Welcome back, everybody, to Lessons in Filmmaking. I apologize in advance for my voice. I'm battling a little bit of a throat cold right now, but I've got some green tea with honey and I'm ready to power through. So there's one standout YouTube video on my channel with just about 60,000 views now. As someone who really values the work that I do, it's really cool to see so many eyes on it, and I'm really grateful that so many of you have watched it. If you haven't seen it, it's a short film called The Anomaly. So unfortunately, among those 60,000 views or so, not many of you really enjoyed it, or even understood it for that matter. Look, I don't blame you at all, okay? I'm here today to explain myself. So I made a bad short film, and this is what I learned. So I will say I didn't make this short film alone. I made it alongside a very good friend of mine. His name is Dawson Bryant. I'm gonna link his channel in the description, but he just released, on the contrary, a really excellent short film, just one of the best ones I've seen in such a long time, called Between the Earth and the Sky, and I would highly recommend checking that out. So when we made this short film, we were juniors in film school at the time, so I believe that was 2020. And if anyone remembers anything about 2020, you'll remember that we were still in the height of a global pandemic. So I personally had just been living with my parents for about 6 months, so I was eager to get working on something new. So we show up for the first day of one of our classes in film school, and we were essentially told on day one, hey guys, you're all gonna make short films this semester. And of course, we being still in a pandemic, were really hesitant. We had a lot of questions. We didn't really know how it was all gonna work. But it was that day that we were all given this grand assignment, of course with a lot of regulations, that we were going to make a short film. So this was something like August or September at the time, and we were basically told that we had to set our dates, our shoot dates, in between September and October. We could only have 10 people total, including cast. There was a mandatory quarantine restriction, so for 2 weeks leading up to the shoot days, we could only be interacting within our own 10-person group. So basically we agreed to all of those terms and we set off to make a movie. So this is where I'll identify one of the first problems with this short film. And honestly, I think this is one of the biggest ones. So the first problem is that we had a very rushed script timeline. Because basically, instead of pulling from any roster of screenplays that we might have already to make something, we decided that we wanted to start totally from scratch and write something new. Now the purpose of this, if you haven't seen the short film, I'd highly recommend going and checking it out. You'll see that the location is really, really interesting. So it's this big sort of rock canyon in the middle of the woods. And so we decided that we wanted to write a screenplay for that specific location. So in total, between inception to principal photography was a timeline of about 6 weeks. If anyone knows anything about filmmaking, you'll know that that is not a lot of time. It also didn't help that the script was pretty complicated. I think if I remember correctly, it was something like maybe 15 pages. And it was ultimately through this problem that I learned that story is the most important thing. If you don't have a good story, then you're not going to grip people the way that you would like to. It doesn't matter how good the visuals are or how good the editing is. If the story, if the writing is not there, then you've lost people. I take a lot of responsibility for this too, because I'm a writer at heart and I poured so much of my creative energy into this screenplay, just hoping and hoping that it would work and that we could find a way to make it work. And ultimately it kind of came up short, because at the end of the day, rushed writing makes for story holes. This was echoed by a Mr. Mark Bigelow 2608, who comments, big nothing burger. Now I find that comment a little silly and a little funny, but I don't necessarily disagree. You know, I think there's a lot of holes in this story. There's a lot of stuff left out, and there's a lot to be desired. And once again, at Guardrail Biter, that's a very interesting name, says there is a cavernous gulf between a short film and an incomplete story. And I don't necessarily disagree with that as well. I think what we were going for conceptually here was a little too big for a short film. And maybe it would have worked better as a larger project, but within the resources and the timeline that we had, we were really just aiming to see what we could do. So by the time we got to production, it was such a constant rush of adrenaline. We had about 3 days of principal photography filled with lugging a bunch of equipment up the side of a mountain. It rained the first day. We tied a bunch of ropes out in the woods just to make it a little safer for people to, navigate up the side of the mountain. There's even one shot in the film where the camera is sort of looking down into this canyon as the character walks through. That was actually the idea of the director of photography, our good friend Jared. He decided that what he really wanted to do was take the very, very expensive camera that the school owns and climb up on top of this big, huge rock where directly next to him was this incredibly deep, large, cavernous fall. That gave me a lot of anxiety, but for some reason we did it. To all of our professors at the time, I'm sorry. But I'm not sorry about how that shot turned out. I mean, come on. We had low to almost no cell service. I remember we had to send the first AD down the road just so that she could get cell service to check the weather to make sure that we weren't about to get stormed on. We were just foolish college kids. That is the gist of it. So this brings up what is really the second big problem of this project, which really relates well to the first problem, which is the script and the rushed timeline. The second problem was that we had way too much to do and not enough time to do it. I think maybe we could have pulled this off a little bit better if we had an entire week to do this production, but we had 3 days. And 3 days really turned into like 2.5 days because the first day it just rained so much that we had to quit after about 6 hours. Personally, I loved the challenge of this production. Everything about it was challenging. The logistics were challenging, the constant changes were challenging. Even the fact that we had 2 directors with kind of dueling visions at times was challenging. But among all the noise and among all the things that people might not have liked, we came out with some pretty cool stuff, I think. Personally, I'm most proud of the scene where, and I'm sorry, spoiler, if you haven't seen it, then stop the video now and go watch it, but the scene where the main character, Noelle, slips and breaks her ankle. Andres Martinez says she twisted her ankle inwards, but it's pointing outwards. Now that's an anomaly. I enjoyed it, thumbs up. All right, well, we'll take it, it's a win. And at Schoolmeyer says, when she broke her ankle and I heard it crack, I jumped and closed my eyes. And really, at Schoolmeyer, that is all that I care about at the end of the day. We tried some stuff, it didn't all land, but that piece of it landed for some people, and that really means a lot to me. But ultimately, it's great to be proud of the little things, but the fact that we had way too much to do and not enough time to do it, ultimately I think caused more hurt to the project than anything. So eventually we finished the project. We spent a lot of time editing, had to do a little bit of reshooting, but we finished the project and it felt really good to do that. And ultimately we were truthfully really proud of it and still are to this day. But I think we might have got in a little bit over our heads. And so really the third problem that really ultimately came with this project was just our naive natures. You know, we submitted to a bunch of film festivals, and this was really the first time that I had done this. So when we submitted to all these film festivals, what happened was we didn't realize that a bunch of them were online events. Some of them didn't seem all that legit. Of course, this was still kind of pandemic times, so it was kind of hard to navigate that space anyways. But some of them, like I said, were just online events that handed out laurels. Of course, we were still figuring this out. So we collected all these laurels and we basked in the acclaim, and we just kept going with it. We actually even did a little online interview once. And this was for kind of an interesting festival that happened somewhere out in California. Of course, we didn't get to do it because it was COVID times, but we got to do an online interview. It was kind of fun. If I can find it anywhere, I'll put it in the link below. But really, we started to think, oh man, I think we really have something here. Our professors at school started to really recognize the work, particularly of Jared Draney, as I mentioned before, the cinematographer, who really just did an excellent job, as well as the editing, which was all done by Dawson. Just really excellent work all around. And it really seemed like everybody in our closest circle loved the film. Of course, everybody in our closest circle were also filmmakers. So that's where the naivete comes in. We really just got in over our heads. And I think maybe we thought the project was more than it was, which to me, what it was a learning experience. And then finally, just about a year later, we released the film right here on this channel. And man, let me tell you, those comments started flooding in. Bruce David Kellogg says, sorry, but that was terrible. 15 minutes, I can't get back. Johnny James 5184 says, what a load of mambo jumbo. Brian Pan 6453 says, this movie made no sense. I did not get it. Liz Starwalker says, too vague. Too vague. Jesse says, this was stupid. Every time I watch these short movies on YouTube, they always have open endings like these. It gets old fast. Yeah, nah. Bailed out at 1 minute 46 seconds. Weak. So these are really the kind of comments that started coming through on this project, and to be honest, the comments that still keep coming through. Every couple of weeks I get a little buzz on my phone, and I get to look at it and kind of chuckle that there's somebody else that didn't understand the movie. But that's okay. You know, I don't let it get to me because that's not really what I care about. You know, some people understood it completely, and for that, I'm super grateful. But a lot of people really disliked the project and continue to just kind of give it hate. And you know what, man? More power to you, for real. I have a really terrible habit of indulging all of these trolls on the internet, and I really shouldn't. I know that I shouldn't, but I do because sometimes it's kind of entertaining. And you know what? No one's safe. So leave your hate comments, but hey, I'll respond to you. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of you. Despite the views, despite whatever acclaim we might have gotten, the story just isn't landing, and still doesn't land with a lot of people. And that's something, you know, as a writer, that is really hard to reckon with even to this day. Look, at the end of the day, I don't really care about what the general consensus is of the public, of the audience, of any given project, to let it stop me from making things. Despite all of these internet strangers throwing out opinions, I'm still gonna make another short film. I have made other short films, and I'm gonna keep making them. Look, your comments are my rocket fuel in a lot of ways. I'm talking to you, Mark Bigelow. Look, I loved making this film. I loved how it turned out, and I love what it says. If you take the time to watch the film, really think about it, and if you don't understand it, I put the explanation in the description of the video. But what we were trying to do was make a film that sort of took a stab at Big Pharma a little bit. We just did it in a way that was really out there, and we went in a direction of sort of sci-fi and fantasy, and I think maybe that got caught up a little bit too much in the web, and the point got a little bit buried underneath the genre. So whether or not it's considered a bad film, and I say a bad film jokingly, I don't think it's a bad film, but whether or not that's how it's perceived, that's not really what matters. All that really matters is that I learned some things and I got better. So to anyone that, I don't know, maybe left one of those comments, or even if you didn't leave a comment but you watched the film and maybe didn't have some great thoughts about it, I respect that. You are absolutely entitled to your opinion when it comes to my work or any other person's work. Criticism is important, as long as it's constructive. It really is important. And I do feel like I grow a lot every time that I really start to hear what people think, even if it is a big old load of mambo jumbo. So thank you everybody for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you've ever made a short film that has some downfalls, or maybe that people didn't like, or maybe didn't land the way that you wanted it to, let's talk about it. And if you want to see my bad film, quote unquote, I will put it in a link in the description and in the comments so you can easily find it. Feel free to like and subscribe if you really do like what I'm doing here. I'm trying to do these about once a month if I can manage it. And if you want to get notified every time that I put another one of these up, you can hit the notifications button right there on my channel, and it'll keep you up to date. So thank you again everyone for watching today's episode of Lessons in Filmmaking. Happy creating, and I will see you all in the next one. Okay, this is just a little side note here, but I don't know if anyone noticed my audio in the last couple of videos was really not good. I recently got a new little shotgun mic, kind of testing it out in this video just to kind of see how it does. So let me know if you like it. I think it's doing pretty well, but yeah, let me know what you think.